Penny's Big Breakaway is a not Sonic game that I've been looking forward to since it was first announced. Ever since Sonic Mania, people have been wondering what Christian Whitehead and his team were cooking up next, and while it wasn't Sonic Mania 2, what we got instead was Penny's Big Breakaway, a 3D platformer that I'll just immediately come out and say has a pretty high skill ceiling, but is really fun to play because of it. Now, this isn't necessarily the 3D platformer to end all 3D platformers like some had maybe hoped it would be. The game definitely has some issues that I'll go over in a minute here, but I think it's a solid enough title to have been Evening Star's first release, and now, I think it's time I get into why that is. Just quickly before I do get into things though, there will be spoilers for the levels and gameplay in this video, as well as the story, although that isn't the biggest focus of the game. But regardless, if you do want to avoid spoilers, I recommend playing the game first and coming back to this video once you've done that, because I've 100%ed this game, including the Steam achievements, so I'll be going over every last thing that it has to offer. Alright, that's it, onto the review. Okay, so to go over the yo-yo in the room, I think we should talk about the gameplay, and trust me, that means a lot of different things to go over. So I'll start with the most obvious thing that this game has going for it, the yo-yo. The yo-yo is a very versatile tool in this game. I mean, it's literally your main source of movement on the ground and in the air, so mastering it is pretty important if you want to be able to get good at this game. And mastering the yo-yo definitely takes some time, like a lot of time really. It's not that it's extremely complicated to understand or anything, just that the tech that you can pull off and also just learning how to be fluid in your movements takes some trial, error, and time to figure out. You can dash, air dash, swing, double jump, attack, spin, ride, and charge the yo-yo, so you can pretty quickly see how easily it can be to lose your focus while in the middle of a level between figuring out what your next best move would be. Usually I focused on air dashing and swinging, since both of those act as a pseudo double jump, but on-ground movement definitely consisted of a dash into yo-yo ride for the quickest speed possible. I will say though, the dash being the same input as attacking with the yo-yo does unfortunately get frustrating if you accidentally press the button too fast or too slow, because you'll end up just attacking instead of dashing, or attacking immediately after a dash, which cancels all of your momentum and doesn't let you do stuff like ride the yo-yo or swing as easily. I think having the dash be on either of the bumpers, or even just on the top controller button, would have worked better for controlling the yo-yo, since getting the dash timing down was definitely something I had difficulty with. You can also control the yo-yo with the right stick, which doesn't seem super useful at first, but trust me, you'll pretty much want to be using that for everything besides probably dashing and swinging. The right stick allows you to swing the yo-yo in any direction you flick it in, instead of just wherever you're facing. So if you're trying to hit an enemy or an object that's to the side of you, using the right stick is very beneficial. And that may sound situational, but a lot of the level design consists of grabbing items, or hitting enemies, or targeting specific things to continue forward, like ziplines and slingshots, so the right stick comes in very handy. You can also dash and hold onto things with the right stick, but I often found it easier to just double tap the X button instead, or square if you're on PlayStation, or maybe even Y if you're playing on the Switch. You know the button. So the yo-yo is very versatile. Is it perfect? No, I don't really think so. The inputs can be a bit finicky, and I think its potential wasn't fully realized, since the dash and swing are mostly just a double jump with some extra flair. Plus, most 3D platformers have a dash or dive, so it's not the most unique thing ever. But that doesn't mean it's bad either. In fact, I found learning how to use it to be pretty enjoyable, and I think it has a lot of awesome tricks that you can do with it. It's just maybe not the most innovative movement tool that they were hoping it would be. Something else I do have to nitpick though, is this game's use of momentum, or I guess kinda lack of. Not like in the way Sonic Frontiers did originally, where there was just no momentum at all, but mostly in the sense that momentum really isn't all that important to the platforming here, beyond doing some crazy speedrun stuff, if you're into that. The game almost feels like it's lacking strong gravity or something, because oftentimes you'll find yourself rolling down the top of a hill and barely picking up any speed at all, but the game makes up for that by allowing you to make it upslopes with barely any momentum at all. It's like there's a severe lack of gravity because you don't pick up much speed going downhill, but you don't lose much going uphill either. It's really weird, honestly. Plus, for almost the entire game's level design, utilizing momentum is barely ever rewarded outside of maybe finding a collectible here and there. If you were expecting this game to play similarly to Sonic, well, it really doesn't. I've seen comparisons to things like Mario 3D World, and yeah, I think that's probably a better comparison to make here. The game does reward your skill in platforming by allowing you to take some more optimal routes if you're good at just normal platforming, but that very specific use of momentum to skip entire sections, or get to higher pathways, or blast through specific parts of the level, just really isn't something that you can do in this game unless the level design specifically wants you to do so. which kinda sucks as someone who likes Sonic games, cause, you know, I like doing that kind of stuff, especially since this game was made by some of the people that worked on Sonic Mania. So that aspect of the game is definitely something that I wish was focused on more. And it also doesn't help that the controls while riding the yo-yo are pretty bad. It feels like trying to have control over Sonic in a boost game. It's just something that doesn't happen. The turning radius is abysmal, and even if you do manage to make a sharp turn while going fast, it will kill basically any speed and momentum you have. I pretty much exclusively used the yo-yo riding while going in a straight line, or on sections of the level that were specifically designed with its utilization in mind, which often provided much wider areas and turns that you could swing into without losing all of your speed. And speaking of the level design, well, I think you already kinda get how I feel about the lack of momentum-based platforming here, but there's a few other things that I want to go over as well. The first are the gimmicks in this game, because there's a few power-ups spread throughout, and also things built into the level design like ziplines and poles to swing from. There's stuff like the burger item, which allows you to break blocks, the pepper item that boosts you while yo-yo riding, this helicopter propeller thing, and even as late as World 8, there's new ones that get introduced, like the magnet, which lets you travel through predetermined beams of, magnetization, I guess, is what they are. I think most of these gimmicks work just fine in the final levels that you play through, but I just can't help but feel like the potential in the level design here is brought down by them. There are a lot of times where you're swinging from pole to pole, or going booster to booster, or trampoline to trampoline. Again, I don't want to sound like the gimmicks being here is a bad thing, cause they aren't. The levels are designed with them in mind, but I just wish it had gone in a different, maybe more, I don't know, momentum-based direction. Okay, I think you probably get it by now. The potential was definitely here in the game. The level design just wasn't utilized 100% how I maybe hoped it would have been. The other thing that's present in the level design here are the collectibles and denizen jobs. Can't be a 3D platformer without some good old collectibles, right? And here they take the form of the showpieces that let you unlock special bonus levels to play later on. I think these are great. They reward skillful play and exploration in the levels, plus they're completely harmless when it comes to the main level pathway, and they even enhance it sometimes. Just basic 3D platformer type stuff. Now the denizen jobs on the other hand are extremely hit or miss for me. To lay out my real frustration with them, I need to explain what they are and how they work. So throughout each level, you'll be able to find 3 denizens that need your help to do something. It could be literally anything. Most of them are collecting a few objects scattered around, just as an example. But anyways, finding these jobs is pretty easy. You tend to run across most of them while just running through the level casually. Now each job has a completion requirement, but also a fail requirement. Seems logical, right? Well, that fail requirement is what can be extremely irritating on most jobs. For some reason, a decent amount of these jobs are on a timer, so if you run out of time, well, good luck next time I guess. Oh, did I not mention that you only get a single try at each job, and failing it means restarting? Or, if you're sneaky like me, you'll find out that you can actually jump off the stage and get a dropout, which won't kill you, but instead make you take 1 point of damage and respawn you at the last checkpoint. And this also lets you retry any jobs that you may have failed. Otherwise, you're gonna have to replay the entire level to retry that job. So good luck on that. Now this wouldn't be the absolute worst thing ever, it's still pretty annoying that you only get a single try, and that dying or restarting is your only option, but what makes it worse is that a lot of these jobs are just downright pace breakers in the levels. Are you having a nice run through the level with a decent time? Keeping your momentum up a bit and haven't gotten hit yet? Well, here's a job that requires you to stop and deliver this evidence to some random lawyer for this unlawfully jailed denizen, which you get to by going out of your way in the level and backtracking to a random baseball glove teleporter thingy, and you need to carefully platform your way across, and don't forget to grab the paper, or else you'll fail. Or forget to talk to the lawyer, cause you'll fail. Or go too slow, because you'll fail. Because did I forget to mention that you're also timed on this mission? Otherwise, have a fun time jumping into the lava and retrying it again. And honestly, that one wasn't even too bad compared to some of the others. I got multiple game overs just from retrying the same job 5 or 6 times in a row because of how annoying they could be sometimes. Maybe I'd be a bit more forgiving to these if you could retry them, or if there wasn't a level timer constantly ticking down, making it seem like you're wasting time by going out of your way to help this random denizen, rather than, you know, progressing the actual level, but I guess that's a bit too much to ask. So, to really put into just a few words the point I'm trying to get across here, I think 90% of the denizen jobs were not integrated into the levels well at all, and really broke the pacing of the levels. I can actually confirm this pretty definitively, because after my first playthrough, I had to go back through some of the levels to get all the showpieces and achievements, and not worrying about the jobs actually made the levels significantly more enjoyable. The only ones I ever did on repeated levels were the ones that were pretty much just in line with going forward and progressing the level, like collecting a random toolbox or bolt here and there. So realistically, I don't think that the denizen job concept as a whole is completely bad. Its implementation is mainly what I take issue with here. Oh, also, the reward for the denizen jobs is just extra coins during the minigame at the end of a level, so not really anything too crazy. I literally haven't spent a single coin so far, since I didn't even realize there was a shop in this game until I actually beat it, and that actually leads me pretty perfectly into my next thing to go over, which is that there aren't any unlockable moves or things that you can get by progressing throughout the game. The gimmick items sorta maybe cover that a bit, but like, not really. There's no increase to yo-yo riding speed, or any sort of spin dash or drop dash with the yo-yo, or maybe you could be able to unlock an extra use of a yo-yo move mid-air so that you could dash twice or something, or even just put some of the base moves in the game behind an unlock system like air dashing. That may sound like it would limit the level design somewhat, but I actually think it would open the game up to be less linear and a lot more interesting and replayable. You could have certain pathways in earlier levels that aren't accessible until you have 2 air dashes or something. Or maybe you just need a lot of speed, which you could achieve by spin dashing with the yo-yo. Things like that. I think it'd also help to ease the player into learning the yo-yo's full moveset, because throwing everything at them all at once is kinda overwhelming, and is a criticism that I've seen a few people throw out already. This would also make the levels feel less static as you play through the game, since you'd be unlocking more and more moves the further on you go, so the later levels could be a lot more insane than the earlier ones. But the way the game is now, the level design and difficulty of everything really doesn't change too much from the first level all the way to the last. There's maybe a slight bit more punishing platforming later on, but overall, the gameplay from level to level doesn't really feel all that different, which is both a good and a bad thing. It means that the game is definitely consistent, so that's good, because at least to me personally, I think it's consistently good, and I had fun with each and every level in it, but also it's a bad thing, because every level just kinda feels the same. There's no uniqueness between these levels other than the way they look, which is kinda unfortunate. Another benefit to adding in new or existing moves into the moveset as the game goes on, rather than right away, is that each one can actually be properly explained and utilized. Sure, the game tells you how to dash and how to swing, but did you know that there's also a ledge grab and a wall jump? Because I didn't know that until I beat the entire game and decided to start playing through some of the Star Globe levels, some of which require you to use mechanics like wall jumping, which were never once mentioned or utilized in the stages. And now that I do know they exist, yeah, they're great additions to your moveset, and make replaying the levels more fun and let you pull off bigger skips in some sections. Too bad I only started using them after I had already beaten the entire game, but I'm also a degenerate who beat the entire game in a single sitting, so maybe if you're a normal person, then you'll actually take a look at the Star Globe levels at least once before beating the entire thing. Well, I'm almost finished with the gameplay section, but I do still have a few more things I want to go over, like the scoring system, and the end of level minigame that you play at the end of each level. I don't mind the Busker Stage minigame. I stopped caring about it once I got the 10,000 coin achievement on Steam, so I usually just mash random buttons until I fail it, but it's something for you to do at the end of the level for extra coins if you really want them. Though that requires doing the denizen jobs, and you know how I feel about those. The thing that I'm more concerned with is the actual scoring system for the game. It feels like there's so much going on in the levels, and so many different things have the potential to give you score, yet I only managed to ever get like 5 full score bars out of every level that I played and replayed. I have no idea what I'm really supposed to be focusing on in the levels in order to build up score. There's a timer present for every level, which is probably just left over from the fact that this game was made by Sonic Mania devs, so should I speedrun the level then? Or should I focus on building up my combo by doing tricks? Or should I explore the levels for the showpieces? Do those even give score? What about the denizen jobs? There's just so much to do in these levels that I feel like there's a lack of focus as to what the player needs to do in order to get a good score. I'm sure the right thing to do is build up a good combo, performing tricks and stuff, but I feel like the scoring system in general should be a bit more lenient with its requirements, and maybe have a bit more focus on the timer part if they're really gonna include it in the normal levels, outside of the time attack. I doubt I'll go back and max out my score on each level. That just seems like too much work, honestly, because I'd basically be replaying the entire game at that point. Plus, the only thing you get for it are these pieces of artwork in the gallery, which, don't get me wrong, are definitely cool pieces of art, and it's neat that you can unlock them. I just don't really care to do so. The other part about replaying these levels is that they've got some nice length to them too, which is a good thing, especially with how many of them there actually are. So while replaying them while trying to do a specific thing might be a bit annoying, I don't really think that's a good enough reason to say that these levels being long is a bad thing. I was also a bit surprised with how many worlds there ended up being too, 11 in total, when I was really expecting around 7 or 8, so I was pleasantly surprised on my first playthrough. And this is just an indie game, yet it has a good amount of content for a 3D platformer. The last little thing that I'll group in with this section while I'm talking about the levels are the actual level themes themselves. These aren't anything super crazy in terms of uniqueness or aesthetics, but I do think they fit the world pretty nicely, and they also actually integrate their level design into the worlds themselves, instead of just having floating platforms and objects everywhere. Frontiers Open Zone. But I really don't think critiquing the level themes here in this game is really the main problem anyway. They're more than just set dressing for the platforming, and there were some legitimately fun level themes like the library in space or the giant bathhouse world. Now I need to talk about something that I've both experienced myself and have seen a lot of other people talking negatively about, and that is the amount of bugs that this game unfortunately has. Now I will admit right away, I maybe only had 1 or 2 game-breaking bugs in my 12 hours of playtime, but the bugs that I'm mainly talking about here are the smaller, more lack of QA testing sort of bugs that I guess just slipped through into the game's release version. So do I think that most of these bugs will get fixed with time? Yeah. I'm sure no developer wants to release a buggy game and just never fix it afterwards. Okay, no indie game developer wants to do that. I really don't want these to be a huge factor in people's opinions of the game, so I'm not really gonna say that these bugs are something that should prevent you from trying out the game, cause most of them are just small things like clipping through random edges of the map, but they do exist, and they probably will happen to you at least once, so I'll let you specifically be your own judge on how long you're willing to put up with them. Me personally, well, I play Sonic games, so I'm pretty used to my games being buggy or janky, especially on release, so I have a decently high tolerance for them. But I can completely understand why there have been a lot of other people that just don't want to, and have left negative reviews on Steam because of it. That's not me looking down on people who leave Steam reviews either. I do read a lot of them for games I'm interested in, and I'll usually leave some of my own, but with the amount of bugs present in this game, I can totally understand the negative reviews that people have left on this game. That's about all I'll really say on the bugs for now. Like I said, a lot of them will probably get fixed in the future, so this section might just become completely irrelevant, so I'm not going to spend any more time on it. Another aspect of the game is, of course, the story. Well, the sort of story here, I guess. Look, it's a 3D platformer, I get it, story isn't the main focus, but there really is not much here in this game. It's quite literally just there to get you from level to level, so yeah, if you're looking for the next best indie game story, maybe don't look here. There are some characters that get introduced in it that have boss fights though, and they're alright I guess. The boss fights are honestly really forgettable, they're not necessarily good or bad, and some worlds don't even have a boss at all, so they're really nothing that special. Another little tiny thing that I've seen people rant about too is the character design for some reason, which I guess if you want to do that, then go ahead. I have my own faults with this game, but that certainly isn't one of them. I think the characters are fine, and they fit the world and stylization of the gameplay, so do they really need to be anything more? I don't think so. But if you dislike how Penny looks, well I'm sure there'll be a Sonic model swap mod that releases eventually, so just use that instead. And you already know that I can't make this video without mentioning the music, all of which is fantastic here. I'm seriously starting to think T. Lopes can't make bad or even mediocre music, cause I've yet to hear anything from him that isn't amazing. All the other composers were great too. Christian Whitehead and Sean Bialo are the other two that I've specifically seen mentioned in the OST videos that the Evening Star channel has been uploading to YouTube, but there's a few others mentioned in the credits too, so a huge round of applause goes towards all of them, because they absolutely deserve it. The soundtrack for this game is a bit different than T. Lopes' other Sonic soundtracks, but he still kills it just as well as those, so I'd honestly trust him to make anything now at this point. Now for some of the extras in the game that you can get by collecting the showpieces. These are called Star Globes, just tiny bite-sized levels that you can beat in under a minute, and for some, under 20 seconds. Yep, that's me right there at the number 15 spot on the leaderboards for the first Star Globe in Time Attack. Okay, really though, these are just harmless little levels that you can do after you've beaten the main game, some of which are actually pretty challenging and make you test your skills, which was welcoming to me after the lack of change in the level design throughout the main game, as I already talked about. Plus, they also made me aware of things like wall jumping and ledge grabbing, which made replaying through the levels more enjoyable as I had some new moves to try out. You unlock these Star Globes by spending your showpieces, so if you want every single one, that means collecting every showpiece in the game, but that really isn't as bad as it sounds. Most of the showpieces are in pretty easy to find places. As for the levels themselves, well I found a few of them like this burger one to be pretty frustrating, but that's because of the momentum and physics and stuff, which I already went over, so no point in talking about it again. I also mentioned the time attack mode pretty briefly, which is of course a neat thing to play around with to try and speedrun some of the levels. I didn't really do too much time attack since I wanted to get this video out in time, but if you enjoy speedrunning, well, you can certainly have some fun getting your name up on the leaderboards in time attack. The other thing that I focused on was getting the achievements, and these achievements are pretty easy to get. Steam says that the hardest one to do is beating each star globe, which I guess makes sense since you also need to collect every showpiece first, which also means beating the entire game, but realistically, this isn't like a hard thing to do at all, it just takes a bit of time. Most of the other achievements were ones that I just unlocked by playing through the game, some requiring a fast time on a level, and others wanting you to do a specific task in a level, but in general, these were just fun little extra challenges to do if you want to. I mainly did them just so I could say I 100%ed the game, which I technically already did before I even unlocked every single achievement, because my save file said 100% after just beating every level in the game, but the completionist side of me wanted to get all the achievements too. So, do I think this game is worth it? Should you go ahead and buy it too? Well, I won't lie, between things like Palworld, Persona 3 Reload, Helldivers 2, and Balatro, this game released at a time with some pretty tough competition in the gaming space, but it makes up for that by being only $30 instead of $70 like some other games, Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones, so you can go ahead and pick up this game for a pretty good price. Although I'd still say it has some tough competition even in its own genre of 3D platformers, between all the Sonic and Mario and even things like A Hat in Time and Psychonauts. But with all that said, I do think that Penny's Big Breakaway is absolutely worth giving a shot if you do enjoy 3D platformers. I maybe wouldn't recommend this to someone as their first 3D platformer, or even if you're just on the fence, because it is pretty challenging to get down at first. But if you've played other 3D platformers, which I'm assuming you have since you've probably played a Sonic game or two if you're watching my channel, then I think you'll have a pretty good time with it. And if you don't, well, you can always just wait for a sale to see for yourself, or just refund the game if you really dislike it that much. TLDR, it's pretty good, and if you think it looks fun to you, then I'd say to go ahead and play it. Because at the end of the day, despite all the potential improvements and bugs, it's a game that I did genuinely have fun with. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. Feel free to drop a like and hit the subscribe button as well if you enjoyed the video, and if you maybe want to see more of my Sonic content, cause that's what I mainly upload here. Penny's Big Breakaway was a game that I'd been looking forward to for a while, and since it was made by some of the Sonic Mania devs, I'd figured I'd also make a video on it, cause while it technically isn't Sonic related, I figured the overlap in interest is probably pretty high. And with that, I think it's time I get back to making some Sonic videos, so I'll see you next time.